Um, I'm Sang from art department. So first, thank you for inviting me to have this kind of great opportunity to share with other faculty members on campus. So today, I'm going to talk about how I teach my students. So many, not only faculty members, staff members, and students wondering what we're doing, especially graphic design media is a kind of new degree program on campus. So we faculty members struggling still like in how we develop disciplines for not only just aesthetic concern but also understanding problem solving. So that's why this kind of event is perfect to not only showing some student work outcomes but also sharing kind of a design method and pedagogy. So first, this is my favorite quote: "Design can be art, design can be aesthetic, and so simple. That's why it is so complicated." Poland. So you probably see that a lot of logo design created by Poland, like such as American Airlines and IBM and ABC, broadcasting things. So he's really emphasized like first aesthetic concern for creativity. However, nowadays the design is so complicated because everybody using smartphone, right? So we are using smartphone without any education. How many of you, learning how to use it? Probably not, right? So it is important how design can be useful and easy to access or communicate with anybody, regardless of any education background. So first question: what are some important research problems in your field? So as I mentioned, that the product design related to design matter. So we talk about user experience nowadays everywhere. So even Apple, they are thinking about design, UX design first. So that means any design should be visible, readable, and understandable, useful for interactive communication. So if it is failed, then that product is not going to be outstanding in the market. So it is important how each graphic design, but also information delivered correctly for user friendly every time. For example, like here, Coca-Cola. So everybody knows that Coca-Cola brand, right? So we have 3 different images here. So one is red, black, and gray. So we know that distinguish identity, right? So without looking at the read or read the text, we understand which one is Diet Coke or zero, right? So this is important, like how we understand the visual language, without any additional information. So like 1 second. So students are learning a lot of different kind of visual languages. So that's why we're teaching how we create a language. Understand language is the primary and a priority to create something useful design in our field. So second question: so what is the problem-solving process in your field, and to what extent does it involve peer feedback or collaboration? So I think our process is pretty much the same as other fields. So first we understand it subject matter correctly. So first a student dig out what the problem is out there, right? So any like a living environment, everything is related to design. So if anything is matter, that could be subject matter. However, students need to come up with what accurate problem is that, why this is happening, why users are frustrated with this problem. So after that, they come up with either problem questions or hypothesis, and then they start thinking about which method is more effective to resolve that problem. So we adopt a lot of different methodology, such as SWOT analysis, a matrix table, survey, and which is related to design theory as well. So some are more like a scientific design process, understanding questions, and then also we go out there and survey or usability test if we have any problem with using app design, whatever, and people might made a mistake at clicking any icons on a smartphone. And then, after those kind of analysis and finding kind of problematic, and we trying to not only dealing with a function but also aesthetic concerns. So those are all kind of great combination in findings. So this is 2 different kind of methodology that I adopted and implemented in student learning. So left side, I think it's slightly a little small to read it, but left side like a diamond step. That means students come up with a short kind of problematic, and then they, have it internally do some brainstorming, questioning each, classmate, and then they confirm whether that problem is realistically, the problematic, or maybe one of audience only, issue. So we just come up with some kind of problem decision and expanded that idea with a bunch of different concept development, and then narrow down a couple of different problem, and then also open another question internally. So right side is more intensive research, which is related to kind of capstone or thesis project. So they spend a lot of time for research, for understanding the problem. So they go usually out there and then do some survey and asking question, for whether that problem is related to our social, kind of activity or one person individual living kind of environment. So a whole bunch of things, depending on what kind of subject matter, they choose, either like this qualitative or quantitative, project. But usually in the classroom, in terms of like 16 weeks, we have probably, 4 to 5, assignment for learning, all kind of matters. So we pretty much, follow the qualitative, method. So this is my favorite question. Every class in the beginning level, I'm asking. So what is the answer A plus B? And this is pretty much like a mathematic, kind of process. But people usually say, oh, A and B could be 1 plus 1, 2. But that's really stereotype. But designer or creator, we should think about something totally different outside the box. So if we understand visual language, as you see, A, B can be a standard solution, but we talk about typography. For example, uppercase, lowercase, we have a different kind of a solution. But depending on how we mix together, the solution can be totally different result. So we have to think about expanding how we can expand the visual concept, not just one idea. It's more than 1, 2, 3, something people never thought about it. So that can be really a great solution defined. And then for peer review, usually student activity internally, and we have a critic, we have a semi-critic or final critic, something like that. So we do have some internal questions, suggestions, or comments. But however, visual language, as we perceive it, there is no right answer. Sometimes depending on how you perceive it, how you understand it, or one person didn't understand it, that doesn't mean design is incorrect or wrong, right? So we have to talk about a lot of pros and cons internally, and then thinking about which would be the best idea to resolve problems. And then external review, as I mentioned, that like a quantitative research method. We go out there on campus and we do a lot of survey and then meeting non-designer, non-artists, so how they understand visual language correctly. But otherwise, many artists, they design something intuitively. That means they don't know whether this is working or not. So every single step, we want to make sure, is that working for everybody? So that is the most important thing for student learning and understanding design. Otherwise, design can be art, art can be design. But however, design and art are totally separate, different. So last question, how do you give student experience in practicing the problem-solving process? So my biggest concern is expanding knowledge and improving critical thinking and practicing craftsmanship through diverse creative working progress. So for example, in the classroom, we do have a lot of survey internally, as I mentioned that, right? So they put in some kind of keyword and then they discuss about how the keyword expand the different idea. So we share, we use it and post it, something like a, attribute, kind of diagram. So every single question or answer, we just post it, and then people, individual students can look at it, and then they can suggest or criticize some, kind of problematic as well. So this can be anything, depending on subject matter. But this is one of our kind of activity. But as I mentioned earlier, SWOT analysis and the matrix table. So I'm gonna share with some example. This is another method, like whenever people look at an identity, for example, as I showed a Coca-Cola, and we understand it's Coca-Cola, how? How do we know about Coca-Cola? Well, first, because we, look at maybe some TV, advertising or, poster or here and there. I mean, grocery shopping and you see the, Coca-Cola. Only, I don't know, maybe age like 4 years old to 5 years. So it has been long. So you memorize from your experiences, right? However, whenever any company, want to create a new brand, how can we make that brand outstanding? So I'm always insist that, any kind of symbol should be unique. That means it distinguishes from other brands, but also clear what it is. So this practice was like many students are struggling, creating the logo design, identity design, unique and distinguished from other brands. So that's because, they only created what they see it. But however, we have to find out like an A-B question, something we don't know, we didn't expect it. So that's why this kind of, method, like a connotative, denotative, first, they have to understanding how to identify characteristic. So I'm going to open up and above your table there, and they simplify the form. And the left side, each student just give, okay, you gotta deal with it like puzzle or some barcode, whatever, QR code, something. So unexpected some subject matter, and then student need to resolve it. That's our job forever, right? So we gonna live in design activity industry for 65 years, whatever. But how can we come up with something new idea every time? So without math knowledge, we can't deal with anything. So after they just mix together the top level and left side, and then they are creating something new design unexpectedly. So this is all kind of happy accident. And then this is one great math knowledge. They created any identity something great and effective. And this is another thing. And typography is one of the most important subject and discipline in graphic design. So everybody using text, everybody knows language, but how can we know language as something different meaning? For example, if I say, can you describe a big? And people say, oh, big is like this. However, no, even small big, but huge negative space can be big. So that's kind of stereotype. So this exercise discipline, and they have to come up with some couple of keyword and how they describe that denotative, connotative meaning, not only the individual letter form, but also word itself, it gives us some kind of narratives. Okay, so this is another fun project. And they have to deal with some 3D architecture form. So how letter form can be presenting or working for some other field. So this student came up with its letter form, choosing chair, but creating chair form. So there were a lot of different exercises, pros and cons, and finally we made it this kind of chair. So individual letter form can be assembled, but this the chair form, it totally has different function. And this is another kind of example of sustainability. So nowadays, recycling and sustainability issues are really important in society. So any subject matter, it is important in design field, but however, we have to understand how society needed, what they needed, what we can help out our world. So students need to execute some kind of paper construction, how we can use paper, but more than just a paper function. So they have to use the paper as a different folding, die cut, and different kind of assembling process, and then come up with some simple kind of sandwich bag. And this is another example how tea contain package can be something not display nicely and elegant, but also functioning to use the container. So this is another fun outcomes, very successful. And we talk about a lot of pros and cons, and then many students talk about, okay, I had a problem with using this packet because it's too long and it's very difficult to grab the chips, potato chips inside it. So they just flip over. So actually we did it in the classroom and bring it because, and then they just showed how to use it, and everybody laughing, giggling, because They see the problem exactly. So that's the experience, bad experience, how we can make it something better. So first we reduce the size and then divide two sections because we are not going to reduce the amount of, for potato chips, right? So keep it, but after that, recycling. How can we recycle this package? So they can use some pencil, containers, whatever. So as you see, it's fun. So in advanced level, we deal with brand identity. So this is one of the example, and we redesigned what is the Outback, restaurant. So Outback, is from Australia. However, they don't identify any Australian culture and their identity. So the biggest problem is how we can, bring back, their culture into not only the United States but all around the world. So this student, brought in all kind of a traditional kind of icon and symbol and play with, some patterns and also secondary identity with the color and shapes and incorporate with all package design together. So this is one of the examples of my expertise. I was working Korean Mint. So I'm one of 200 security printing design around the world. So that means I know how to create it, US money. But I decided to provide this discipline to students, but not intensive detail because we don't have any facility. What we actually created in a manufacturer banknote design. So we had 3 different projects: banknote and postcard and postage and U.S. passport. So outcome was really outstanding, and then student got award, Adobe award, with this assignment. And then when they have a capstone, they have to prepare professionals. So this is an example of how they prepare for a job application. So this is their identity, self-promotion stuff. So they have to create their identity and also application for promotion, stuff. So when they apply job and then giving, big impression is the, really important. Otherwise, there are a bunch of, great design out there, and even, classmates, they, compete each other because when they apply job, for example, MGM, they open one position, but everybody's competing there. So, however, how are you gonna sell yourself? That's my question. How are you gonna promote yourself after first job? So it is important, keeping their identity and also thinking about how they can, sustain, their job. Because once again, our field is very tough if we don't know how to create a different design every day. So that's a really, difficult part, but also the pedagogy, pedagogical kind of approaches. Not only just an exercise there, okay, design something, coax cable, brochure, that's nothing. But however, understand how to design is the most important in our field. So I think, that we adopt a lot of different disciplines and methodology from science and business and liberal art, so everything. So that's why design, discipline education is so difficult, but I always encourage my students to expand, just to go to outside, department. So meet somebody from, for example, psychology, listening what they talk about the red color, how they represent it. So it is important to understanding how our visual language can be understandable differently or correctly or maybe innovative, So that's pretty much it for today. And do I have to ask a question? Or?
Let's save questions for the end.
The end, okay, okay.